You're listening to The Mountain Spirit, a podcast of Christian Appalachian Project, where we share inspirational stories of faith, service, and compassion. I'm a firm believer that we're all connected by our shared humanity, and that finding that intersection sometimes just means having a conversation. Today we get to hear from Ethan Forhetz, Vice President of Public Engagement with Convoy of Hope, based in Springfield, Missouri. Convoy of Hope is a faith-based organization with a driving passion to feed the world through children's feeding initiatives, community outreach, and disaster response. In partnership with local churches, businesses, civic organizations, and government agencies, Convoy strategically offers help and hope to communities around the world. In August 2022, Convoy of Hope's disaster team surveyed different regions and came across the post-flood humanitarian work that Christian Appalachian Project was doing. That natural disaster prompted the first truckload of Convoy supplies. In May 2023, CAP's Operation Sharing Program and Convoy of Hope solidified a partnership, and now close to 10 tractor-trailer loads of essential items each month reaches families in need in Appalachia. That includes items such as food, water, building materials, furniture, clothing, and hygiene products, as well as medical supplies. We appreciate that partnership. Hey, Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tina. Great to be with you.
We're so excited. We definitely appreciate the partnership with Convoy of Hope and are really, really excited to have you on today to learn more about it and sharing that with our listeners.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the relationship as well, and we understand, just like you do, that we can do more together than we can apart. So thank you for being part of our Together.
Awesome. So for people who may not be familiar with Convoy of Hope, can you share with us what motivated your founder to start this organization?
Yeah, it's a remarkable story of our founder, Hal Donaldson, who was still the president of the organization. Back when he was probably 12 years old, 1969, his parents, who were pastors of a church, went to a business meeting, and they left the kids behind with the babysitter that night. And while his parents were at that business meeting, driving to and from, they were hit head on by a drunk driver, and Hal's father was killed instantly. And the kid's mother was in the hospital for about a year, recovering from very serious injuries. So during that time, there was a couple in town from their church that said, we'll take the kids. And Hal and his three siblings went to live with this couple. And at times, there were 10 people living inside a single wide trailer. And the man who hit the Donaldsons did not have insurance. The Donaldsons did not have insurance. So following that tragic car wreck, Hal and his siblings really learned what it was to be in poverty. They learned what it was to be on food stamps and just deal with what he called the shame of poverty, dealing with not having money for basic resources. But he also, during that time, got to experience the kindness of strangers, people from the church, people who were strangers, who just heard about the situation, would drop off groceries at their doorstep. They would take them shoe shopping for school. So it really was the best and worst of times. You got to experience the best and worst of humanity during that time. So following that time, Hal made up his mind that he was not going to live in poverty when he became an adult. So he got a good education, and he was working as a journalist and writing books. And as part of that, he got a trip to India to write a book about famed missionaries, the Bantains in India, missionaries there. And as part of that, they had set up an interview for him with Mother Teresa, of all people. So now he's sitting with Mother Teresa, interviewing her, when she turned the tables on a young Hal Donaldson and said, "Young man, what are you doing to help the poor and the suffering?" And at that time in his life, he wasn't doing anything. So he told her the truth, which he was ashamed of. He thought it was not a good idea to lie to Mother Teresa. So he told her the truth. And he said, "Well, I'm not doing much of anything." And she responded in a very kind way. She said, "Everyone can do something. Just do the next kind thing that God puts in front of you." So those words, he said, haunted him as he came back to the United States. He knew that he had to do something. So his something was to empty his bank account of about $300 and go buy some groceries with that money, and then take them out to a group of migrant farmers in the area where he was living and pass them out. And the smiles that he saw on their faces really warmed his heart, and he knew that he needed to do more things like that. So he started what he called back then care days in his community, where he would get together churches and friends and family members, and they would collect supplies, and they would just have care days where they would give them out to people in the community. And that really is the genesis of Convoy of Hope. It was officially formed as an organization in 1994. We are currently celebrating our 30th year in existence. And there's a Bible verse that says, "Do not despise small beginnings." So what started out as $300 worth of groceries that Hal was giving out has now turned into more than $2.5 billion worth of supplies that Convoy has given out in the last 30 years. And that handful of migrant farmers has now become more than 250 million people affected by the kindness of Convoy of Hope. So it's really an amazing story.
I think it probably goes without saying, but I'm going to still ask you this question anyway. What drew you to get involved with Convoy of Hope?
Well, my wife and I both came over to Convoy of Hope together. And prior to that, we both had 25-year careers in local television news. We were both news anchors in town, in several towns, but in the town where Convoy of Hope is headquartered for the last 15 years. And what we saw during that time was we would look at Convoy of Hope like a journalist would, with a critical eye. So we knew what a great organization that they were, that they didn't have any problems that anybody knew of. They were the highest rated 4 out of 4-star charity on Charity Navigator for the last 15 plus years. We knew a lot of the people who worked here. My wife got to go cover Convoy of Hope and its women's empowerment program in Africa when she was a journalist. So she really got an inside look at the organization. We knew the founders. We really just held the organization in the highest regard. And then there came a year where she and I each felt like that the Lord was calling us out of news, that we were to do something else. We didn't know exactly what that was going to be. So we just had a conversation with Convoy of Hope because we knew what a great organization it was. And we wanted to do something, frankly, Tina, to be part of the solution. Because there were times when we were in the media that we felt like we were part of the problem with the division that was happening in the United States, those sorts of things. We wanted to do something that was part of the solution. So when the opportunity arose for us to move over to Convoy of Hope, it became the right move for us at the right time. And it's been a blessing ever since.
Awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned news. And so we see a lot of things on the news of things that are happening all over the world. How do you all decide where to help and how to get supplies to those who need it the most?
Well, a lot of what Convoy of Hope does is respond to disasters in this country and around the world. And we do that a lot. Just last year, for example, we set a new record for the organization by responding to 86 disasters around the world and in this country. When you consider there are 52 weeks in a year, okay, now you start to get an idea of how busy our disaster teams are. And we just broke a record from the year previous that was 75 disasters. So it seems like more and more we're able to respond. And most of the time, we have learned as an organization to wait to be invited into a situation, because we've gone into situations before uninvited and we found out that, okay, well, we're really not needed here. The people are able to take care of this themselves. They've got enough supplies coming in from other places. So what we've done over the years is we've really honed in on our partnerships with churches, because there are several churches, as you know, in every community across this country. They're great partners for us because they become our eyes and ears on the road, even as we're driving down into a situation. They are able to tell us what the situation is like on the ground and tell us whether we're needed there or we would be more needed down the road at a different community. They make great partners for that reason. We always end up on a church parking lot because they're big and empty most of the time. It's a great place for our literal Convoy of Hope, to our disaster trucks to end up and kind of call home for the next couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months or a couple of years, depending on the severity of the disaster. So we wait for an invite most of the time, unless it's going to be a major disaster. And the only time that you can foresee that is when it's a hurricane. You can kind of see a hurricane coming, and if it's going to be a category 4 or 5, we hit the road in advance to head down there because we know that we're going to be needed. But most of the time, we wait until we're invited.
stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you want to have fun this summer while saving money for college? Be a summertime superhero as a camp counselor with Christian Appalachian Project at one of our 2 beautiful camps. You'll have a great time and make a difference in the lives of kids in Eastern Kentucky. Our camp counselors have a blast outside boating, creating arts and crafts, and playing games with our campers. The kids love the activities, but what they remember most about camp are the volunteers who cared enough to spend their summer with them. While you're here, you'll earn an educational award that you can use towards college or trade school, and other benefits too, like a financial stipend. Email volunteer@chrisapp.org. That's volunteer@CHRISAPP.org or text 859-797-3059 to learn more. We can't wait to hear from you.
In addition to disaster relief, what other services does Convoy of Hope provide?
We have great community events and rural initiatives where we go into big cities and small towns all across this country, and we just empower the local church. And another thing is to empower the local organizations that are already on the ground doing such a great job, like what your organization does, just the great work that is being done on the ground. So Convoy of Hope is blessed with supply. We have a lot of resources because we have great relationships with corporations across this country. So we have the supply to be able to go into places and be able to say, here's what we can do. We can resource you so that you can do an even bigger and better job. And that's what we do with our community events and our rural initiatives. They're typically one-day events where in big cities and small towns all across the country, where we go in and we bring together all of the local organizations, all of the nonprofits, churches in the community, regardless of denomination. We work with all of them. And we say, we're going to have this event. We're going to resource it. So we're going to bring in all the supplies. And we'd love for you to volunteer, have your groups volunteer. And we'll put you in touch with the people in the community who need your services so that once Convoy of Hope leaves after that day is over, the people who are in the town who need help are now in touch with the organizations that can provide the help longer term. And we supply the groceries and we supply the shoes and socks and a lot of the things that way. But we bring together job help, job fair help, job application help, veterans health, health services, the National Breast Cancer Foundation, just a lot of organizations that can really help people in a way that we can't for a longer term.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned earlier in talking about how you and your wife came to Convoy of Hope, you mentioned the Women's Empowerment Initiative. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Like, what is it and how are you helping women around the world?
Yeah, you bet. I love our Women's Empowerment Initiative because it's something that we do in countries all around the world where we do a study and we find out what kind of business is needed there. And these are mostly in countries where it's shocking but true that women are less valued than cattle in some spots. And many times they have the children at home and they don't have a way to provide for the family. So what Convoy does is we find out what business is needed there. We then teach the woman those job skills. We then give her the equipment she needs to start that business, whether it's a sewing machine or restaurant equipment, whatever that is. And then we come alongside her for the next year or so to make sure she can manage the business, handle the books and all of that sort of thing. And then it's hands off and we get the joy of watching her thrive and be able to make a living for herself and for her family. And that's one of the ways that we work to end generational poverty, because for that family now, there's a business that's involved and it thrives and the woman does well and she can provide for her kids. They're not needed to be in our children's feeding program anymore. So it really is empowering for the woman. It's a way to show dignity to the woman. And what we see many, many times is that the women who've gone through the program and are now doing well, they like to give money back to our program so that we can help other women because they know the desperate situation that so many other women are in because they used to be in that situation.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And just talking about the dignity of that so resonates with us at Christian Appalachian Project as well. So tell me why are partnerships, you alluded to this a little bit earlier as well, why are partnerships critical in your humanitarian work?
It's the simple idea that we can do more together than we can apart. One organization can't reach all the people, can't solve all the problems. We all have different specialties. We're all good at different things. We all have our own lanes that we're in. So if we team up with like-minded organizations like Convoy and the Christian Appalachian Project, it's a way for us to have a much greater impact than we can just by ourselves. It's true in life that you can do more with people than you can by yourself. Nobody's an island. No organization is an island. So we realized that. And when we realized that very early on, we immediately began to start affecting the lives of more people exponentially. It's not adding to, it's multiplying the effect when you get the different organizations involved, because we all do different things well. So if we lock arms together and we work together, we can really affect the job in a more positive way.
Can you share with us an impact story that has stayed with you in your time with Convoy?
I get asked a lot that question, and this is the story that I go to because it's really powerful. But back following Hurricane Harvey in the Houston, Texas area, there was extreme flooding in that storm, but there was also wind damage. And we were in an area where the wind damage was the bigger issue, and we were helping people. And there was a woman on Twitter who every time there's a major disaster, she tweets out that you should donate to Convoy of Hope because she knows firsthand that cheese sandwiches and chainsaws saved her life. So we saw her do that on Twitter a couple of times. And then my wife, working for the organization, a former reporter, was able to track her down and get in touch with her and say, I'd love to talk with you about what you mean by that. So they had a conversation. And the woman said, during Hurricane Harvey, I was down and out. I had a bunch of oak trees on my property that were down on my house, roof damage, the works. And prior to that storm moving through, I had lost my job. So I was really in bad shape, mentally, emotionally, in every way, and even physically with the storm damage to her home. And there was a Convoy of Hope crew that pulled up in front of my house, and some volunteers jumped out, and they came up to my porch, and they had some water, and they had cheese sandwiches, and they had chainsaws in their truck, and they said, "What can we do to help you?" And she said, "Well, I've got these oak trees down in my yard." Over the next 2 days, our crews were able to get those trees off her house, cut up those oak trees. And that's an amazing story. My wife said, "Well, but how did they save your life? What do you mean by that?" And the woman said that she was at wit's end, and she had been sitting on her front porch that day with a gun in her lap, and she was planning to take her own life. But because of the timing and the kindness of those people who pulled up and were able to help her with her problems, she's still alive today. And that story always gets me. But for me, the message is that, cheese sandwiches seemed pretty simple to the volunteers who jumped out of that truck, and even chopping down a tree, because they do that a lot. But for her, it tells me that something that seems small to you never know the impact that it's going to have on somebody else, because you don't know where that person is right now. Could be the worst day of their life. They could be at wit's end. You doing one kind thing, like Mother Teresa said, the next kind thing. Just do the next kind thing and let the Lord handle the results. And for this woman, it was life altering.
Wow. That is amazing. That is one of those just encouragement to all of us, as your founder was encouraged to take those words back and do something that we all can do. That next kind thing for the folks that our paths cross each day. That's powerful. What are some of the challenges you see as conflicts seem to be erupting around the globe?
Obviously, we're seeing more war than we used to. We're responding to 2 war fronts currently. We're both helping in Israel and in Gaza, as well as in Ukraine, where we've been for more than 2 years now. War zones are very, very challenging just because of the danger involved, the restrictions involved in getting places. You're not allowed to go some places. And many times that's where the people who need help are. It's very difficult. In fact, we just had, if you go to Convoy of Hope's social media, just not long ago, we had a post where one of our partner organizations, and again, we partner with a lot of organizations to do the work, but we sent in the supplies of food and groceries. And this partner organization was driving them into Ukraine to drop them off for the people who live there, who rely on Convoy of Hope weekly for the food that they eat. And there's dash cam video from the front of this van, or the van is driving along in Ukraine, and all of a sudden explodes. It's hit by a drone strike, hits the van, and totally knocks out the van. Amazingly, miraculously, I would say, the people inside the van were unhurt, and all of the supply, all of the groceries that they were delivering was unharmed. So they were able to get another van and drive it on and deliver those supplies to the people of Ukraine, even though they were hit by a drone, an actual drone strike hit the van. It's unbelievable video that you could see on our social media pages. So that's just living proof example of the danger that's involved with war zones. So that is the biggest challenge that we face, is getting into those places and keeping our people and partners safe.
A lot of prayers, I'm sure, going out to cover your teams and cover the organizations on the ground that is getting that much needed assistance to people in desperate situations. What are the opportunities that you're hopeful about?
Well, we're hopeful that the wars will end. So we continue to have hope that is the case. We're also hopeful that our children's feeding program will continue growing the way that we have strategically planned for it to grow. We're currently feeding more than 570,000 children every school day around the world. And our goal is to be feeding 1 million school children every school day around the world by the year 2030, which is, it's just right around the corner. So we're working toward that goal. We're adding children every year to it. And we do that in a way that's sustainable, because the last thing we want to do is start helping kids in a community and then suddenly not have the resources and have to back out of that community. We never want to do that. So we work hard to make sure that what we do is sustainable, that we're able to continue helping for long term. So we're hopeful about that. We've got some other goals as well, but I think as we look to the next 5 or 6 years or so, getting to 1 million kids every school day is big for us, and we're looking forward to hitting that mark.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Your generosity has a direct and positive impact in the lives of people in need in Appalachia every day. It is the unwavering support of faithful friends like you that make this work possible. Many of our supporters are beginning to plan and envision what kind of legacy they want to leave to support the causes that are near and dear to their hearts. CAP is happy to provide a safe and easy experience for people to create a will and support CAP through non-cash gifts. Through our partnership with Free Will, CAP offers our donors the ability to create a will online and alter it at no charge. Our partnership with Free Will also includes their Smart Giving Suite, which allows donors to give through their IRA, donor advised funds, and stock online, in addition to creating a will for free. In recent years, Appalachia has faced unrelenting challenges, including the pandemic, inflation, and back-to-back natural disasters. You can make a life-changing impact and leave a legacy of hope in Appalachia. To learn more about non-cash giving opportunities, please visit christianapp.org/more-ways-to-give.
You may know this to be a true thing, or as you could think about from your founder's perspective of starting out that $300 and doing that one next kind thing. What do you think he wants the legacy of Convoy of Hope to be in the generations to come?
Kindness, number one. I think, he got that straight from Mother Teresa, and that's the thing that he talks to us about. It's just kindness. And I think we're living in a time where there's a lack of kindness. There's a lack of grace. There's a lack of empathy. So he's always talking to the Convoy team about that. We want to show kindness to people around the world, but also the people in the cubicle next to us, in the car next to us, which sometimes can be difficult. But, those are the times that we can get frustrated with our daily work lives, and the people who are closest to us, our family. We can get home from work, have a tough day, and then have a short fuse at home. So we want to remember kindness above all, and just do the next kind thing that God puts in front of us, because the Lord is always putting opportunities in front of us. So we want to pray and believe that we'd be able to spot those opportunities and not be so caught up in ourselves that we miss opportunities that he puts in front of us, because he gives us opportunities all the time.
Our core values at Christian Appalachian Project are faith, service, and compassion. Can you tell me a few of your core values and why do those stand out for you?
Yeah, we have several core values, just like you. Love is our top core value. We want to show love. We want to have true love for people, and we want to show them God's love. Ultimately, is what we want to do, and that goes along with everything that we do. Whenever we're giving out supplies, we're really showing love to people. We've talked about dignity already. That's another thing that we really value at Convoy of Hope. The people that we're helping, we want to show them dignity because many times the world doesn't show them dignity, but they have just as much worth, whether they're receiving help or giving help. They have the same amount of worth, certainly in the Lord's eyes. Service is important. We want to serve. We want to do what we can to serve, and that takes on different look depending on the different types of things that we're doing. So our children's feeding service is different from our disaster response service, and our agriculture service is different from our women's empowerment service. But all those services, what's great about them is that they can all work together. Many times a disaster is what opens the door for our other programs in a country. A disaster is what gets us in the door there. And then we're able to implement our other strategies as well. We want to do everything with excellence. Excellence is not talked a lot about these days when everything's cheaper and faster, but Convoy really wants to do everything with a high level of excellence. Integrity is also very important to the organization, financial integrity to be sure, because people have a choice whether they want to give us their hard-earned dollars. We want to be able to give them every reason why they can trust us and trust that we will have integrity with what we're doing with their dollars. Unity is very important. That's something, again, that is lacking in our society. We want, as a team, to have unity. We want to be of one voice and one accord so that as we're giving that help, it multiplies, again, that effect. Partnership. We talked about this already, but just the partnerships are so important because we do one thing well, another organization does something else well. When we combine those, we can cover the whole groundwork. So there's lots of different partnerships. Advocacy, we want to advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves and be able to get them the support that they need. And then finally, hope. That's ultimately what we're giving everybody, whether it's at a disaster site or a children's feeding program or women's empowerment or agriculture. We're giving them hope that tomorrow is going to be a better day. And we give them the tools to sometimes make that happen for themselves. But everybody needs hope. And there's a lot of lack of hope in our society these days. A lot of people feel hopeless. But having hope can really make the difference in someone's future.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you've talked about women's empowerment. We talked about the children's feeding program. We didn't talk about agriculture. Can you speak a little bit about what that component of Convoy of Hope is?
Yeah, I love our agriculture program because really what we're doing is teaching a man to fish. We teach people how to farm their land, and we have biologists and soil scientists. We have all the experts on hand to be able to do that well. And we go into different countries. We know what can grow there. We teach them how to farm their land in a way that is productive because there's a science to it. I don't know if you've ever tried to have your own garden, but it ain't easy. My wife and I tried with it, I think the rest of the country in the COVID year, and it didn't go so well. So when Convoy goes in and teaches people how to farm their land, the results really are life-changing. There's a great story on our website out of Nepal. There was an earthquake there, a devastating earthquake in 2015. Convoy of Hope went in. We were giving people food for today, which meant we also had to give them food for tomorrow, which is not Convoy's long-term strategy. We said, if you would get behind agriculture, we could really teach you how to farm. The whole community said, yes, 100% we're in. So there's a Nepalese man in the story that says 1 year ago, prior to Convoy of Hope moving in, I was making 1,500 rupees. Now, 1 year after Convoy teaching me how to farm, I'm now making 60,000 rupees. Now, if you go from 1,500 to 60,000 anything, jelly beans, you're doing really well. It can be life-changing. And it is in his case. And I just talked to our contact there, because the best news of all is that Convoy's hands are off. We've now moved out of that community. We don't have to help them anymore. They're providing enough food for themselves. They can go take the produce and sell it to nearby villages and make money. Our contact, who was in that video story, was just here for the dedication of our brand new global headquarters and training center last fall. And I saw him and I said, "Hey, you're the guy from the story." He said, yeah. And I was just in Nepal again last week, and they are now making $10,000 more than a rupee, $10,000 a day just on tomato exports. They are doing really, really well in Nepal, which is Convoy's goal. They are now self-sufficient. They don't need anybody to help them anymore. We gave them the help. We can now take our resources to a different place and teach different people how to do exactly what we've taught there. And in that community, generational poverty has been ended, because that knowledge of farming will now grow up with the kids. They'll grow up on the farm and know how to do it, and they won't have to worry about food anymore.
You all have a lot of core values that are similar to CAP's, and so our last question always to our guests is this. The mission statement of Christian Appalachian Project is building hope, transforming lives, and sharing Christ's love through service in Appalachia. Hope, transformation, love, and service. Of these four, which one resonates with you the most when you think of your mission?
I think hope. Just think about the word hopelessness. It's such an empty place. And a lot of us have been there at different times in our lives and have been able to pull ourselves out of hopelessness. But you remember what a dark chasm that is, what a deep, dark space that it is. So I think as we give people hope, that's what people need to keep going. That's what we gave to that woman following Hurricane Harvey when we delivered cheese sandwiches and chainsaws. We were giving her hope, because the cheese sandwich was going to be gone in a couple of days. The trees were still stacked up in her yard. She had other problems going on. She was still out of work. But what we gave her in that moment was hope. And I think without hope, it's difficult to go on. So I think the number one thing that Convoy of Hope does with everything that we do is deliver hope to people who are desperately looking for reason to go on.
Ethan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Tina. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Our guest today has been Ethan Forhetz, Vice President of Public Engagement with Convoy of Hope. We hope you've enjoyed the show and check out next week's episode. Tell your friends to check us out too. You can follow the work of Christian Appalachian Project on all social media channels. Find the show online at christianapp.org/podcast or anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode.